Hi guys.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. So this is one of our Youth Central conversations, and we wanted to do something that addressed some of the recent stuff on social media. So I am Dave. I'm one of the ministers at Rising Brook Church and part of the Youth Central team, our youth group. And we have with us Scott, also part of our Youth Central team at Rising Brook, musician, worship leader, sports enthusiast, and just an all-round lovely, lovely man. And joining us, not from Rising Brook, but Sandeep, who I work with at Salt Mine Theatre Company. She's our marketing, a social media guru. Apologies. So,
Thanks.
are you full in the face because you're not a guru, or I got your job title completely wrong?
Got my job title completely wrong, Dave, and we work so closely together.
We
But
do.
it's not. I won't take it personally.
We're in the media team.
Yes, there we go.
But you also know Scott from like way back as well. So
Yeah,
what's the
crazy.
connection there?
Yeah.
What is that connection?
So I'm from a church in Bilston called Excel Church now, but my dad is also a pastor of another church. And so when I was a kid growing up, my dad would go around to different churches preaching, and Scott's old church was one of those churches. So Scott probably remembers me when I was like a teenager playing the tambourine while my dad was singing. And so, yeah, that's the connection. And now here we are as adults on the conversation of race. So
Cool. And then Scott,
spoiled.
I remember, Scott, when I first started working with Sandeep, that we made the connection that we both knew Sandeep. What was the way you described Sandeep to me?
I think I said, yeah, she's absolutely nuts.
And that is very accurate.
I think, quote, that's what I said.
That's very accurate as well.
I was like, oh, Sandeep. Yeah, she's nuts. She's crazy, but she's absolutely wonderful. That's what I said. I'm sure I said that.
I think
Good
Scott.
job he said that, because I got my job. I'm glad you gave me a good reference.
Probably part of the reason why. So today we're hitting the hot potato topic that we've been seeing on social media for a few weeks now, and hopefully, I certainly from what I've learned and gathered over the last few weeks, it's something that we want to continue seeing because it's a really important conversation to have, and it's about race. And some of the historical stuff around race, the way that we kind of play a part in perpetuating that or helping it, and what we can do to move forward. So a lot of this kicked off back at the end of May, where we had the horrible situation where a guy called George Floyd in America was killed by police officers who have subsequently been arrested and charged for that. And it was the way that it went about it. It kicked off a movement of people, and I guess stoked fire for the movement that was already there called Black Lives Matter, that wanted to raise awareness of the injustice that was done to black people in America. But that's kind of rippled out across the world. We're all feeling the effect of that domino, where an incident has just sparked so much outrage that it's caused people to really question the foundation of what they believe and how they should think, and perhaps some of the things, and this is what I've discovered, is that we're ignorant to, and we just don't realise. And I think it's been really, really heartbreaking and challenging and enlightening for me personally. But me in isolation is not enough to do something really about it, and it's important to hear the voices of people who this actually affects on a daily basis. So thanks very much for both of you for kind of like being willing to share some of your thoughts and heart on this. So if I could just throw it out there straight away, we'll kick off, because we don't have like a huge amount of time. It's such a heavy topic, but like, what has your personal experience been of racism, of something where the color of your skin has affected your daily life, and any examples you might have of that? Sandeep, why don't you kick it off?
Yeah, so I have 3 very clear examples of this, which funnily enough, like, happen in every decade of my life. I'm actually 24 now. So I remember when the first time was, I didn't even understand what was going on, but I'm, just for everyone so that you know, I'm actually mixed race heritage. So I am, my dad's from India originally, and then my mom is white and she's from Yorkshire, up north. And I remember I must have been about 7 or 8, and my mom was taking me, my brother, and one of my cousins who's also mixed race from America, taking us swimming. And I remember we crossed the road and someone thought it was necessary to shout at the top of their lungs out the car, "Look at the white woman with all the packies." And I didn't really understand what that meant at the time, But I remember my mom holding her hands and just being like, look down, do not make eye contact, keep walking. And I remember her saying that because now I understand now, she must have been so fearful, thinking, what the heck? And I understand now what was going on, and that I was being judged based on the colour of my skin, and my mom was being mocked for being with children that were a different skin shade to her, and that's so hurtful. Another time I was at Laser Quest, this was when I was a teenager, and I remember a little kid who was there, this little white boy, shouting for no reason at all, shouting, shoot the packy, shoot the packy. And I was like, he's obviously talking about me because I'm the only brown person here. And we were a mixed group of different people. So it was white people, black people, and then I was there as well. And yeah, that again, really hurtful and made me quite angry, but couldn't do anything at the time. Had to just laugh it off, you know, keep a brave face and just go home and talk to my dad and be like, this happened and I'm really sad about it. And there's another time that happened, which was, I was in my 20s and I was getting a train, and I happened to have a reserved seat on this particular train. And I was like, God, why do I have this reserved seat afterwards? Because it was a horrible journey. But I remember getting on the train, and as I was getting on, I had a suitcase with me, and the seat where the place where my seat was next to a guy, but I had the window seat. So I said, oh, can I sit there? He was like, that's fine. One of his friends who he was with thought it was okay to get on the floor, bowing down, saying Allahu Akbar behind me. And I was like, this is even beyond racism now, because you're just making so many different assumptions I can't even label here. But I just know this is utterly barbaric that you think it's okay to do that. And I had to sit in that seat because the train was packed. And I had to sit on that journey in a group of, you know, older, middle-aged white men who were from London, who I actually found out through conversation were going to get someone out of jail who had been in there for extreme right-wing rhetoric. And I had to sit there for that whole train journey. And, you know, they were making conversation with me, but the one next to me was okay, you know, but the rest were like, it was awful. They were trying to film me, and I said, I do not consent to you taking videos of me, so stop that. But having to just be there by myself as a 4'8" young woman who's brown in the middle of this was so scary. But I just had to grin and bear it. I had to just sit there, be really polite, even though I was being verbally abused at the time, and just had to take it. And I just remember going, when I got home, like just being in absolute tears with my parents and being like, I've never felt so less British than other people, when I'm equally as British than anyone here, like equally. I've grown up here, this is all I know, but just that feeling's horrible. Don't wish it on my worst enemy, honestly.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. Scott, what's your experience been?
Well, for me, it's been more of a, I guess, sort of psychological battle. So for me, people didn't realise I am black and I was born in this country. My parents were also born in this country, but my grandparents were born in Jamaica, and one set of grandparents born in Trinidad and Tobago, sort of part of the Caribbean. So I went to a school, a primary school and senior school, and the senior school was quite multi-ethnic, really. So it was probably predominantly white, but there was quite a large group of Asian population and black group as well. And for me, in terms of growing up, I had two friendship groups, and one of them I kind of grew up with some of them in primary school. And there's only three other white guys predominantly. We were in a band together, and then a second group was predominantly black, pretty much all black, mostly Africans. And I guess for me, throughout this period of kind of growing up, I enjoyed being part of both groups, but also trying to work out what my identity was like and kind of how I faced. And for me, I got to a place where I was asking myself questions of which group should I be a part of, or people are going to think that I'm white if I'm with a white people group, or people are going to think that I'm black. And predominantly, I've actually had people have conversations where they will just see me as a person that is white, but in black skin, and maybe comments like, "Oh, you're like the whitest black guy I know," and all those comments have come from somewhere, which I'm sure we'll discuss later. But for me, it's kind of a real battle of wondering, okay, so who am I in this in terms of what people group do I stand for? So I haven't had much sort of abuse at all in terms of like violence or hatred that I'm aware of. I'm sure I've got many friends that I've grown up with in school where they would have been asked to be outside of a shop or something just because they look shady or whatever. Well, that's what they assume. So I haven't had much of that at all. But for me, it's more of a mental thing of, okay, where do I stand here? Like, what people group am I supposed to be in? If that makes sense.
Sure. And like hearing, particularly, I guess, Sandeep, those stories where you felt right in the thick of it, like confronted face to face with some people being just awful to you. And Scott, like you're the whitest black person I know. Nobody's ever said to me, you're the blackest white person I know, or a scale of blackness of whatever that means. Yeah. And that, I guess, that leads us on to our next little bit of like some of these things, these buzzwords we might have seen on social media that perhaps put a bit of framework around our understanding of this topic. And one of them being white privilege. And this is something that that I'd heard before, and I guess, if I'm being honest, initially you react against it because you like to think I'm a good person. I don't treat people badly intentionally. I don't try and go out my way to hurt anybody. But what you've described there is something that is, a judgment made about you right off the bat that I don't actually go through in my daily life. People they might think I look funny because the way I dress, but they don't judge me, or they don't judge me negatively based on the color of my skin. So what's your sort of take on the notion of white privilege and how that plays out? Who wants to take that first?
I can take that, I guess.
Go on.
Can finish it off. I'll explain a little analogy for what white privilege might be, what it is, and then I'll sort of say the dictionary definition. I saw someone film a Instagram story or video explaining it to kids, and I thought, that's really good. I'm going to take that because it's really simple. So she had 2 toy cars, and she used kind of like piping from a house as like a track. And what she did, she had it kind of propped up onto the house, onto like a building, sorry. And then there was 2 cars, but one of them started ahead, or was in the starting position a bit further ahead, and then she let go, and obviously the one that was further ahead finished the race. And then she talked about talked to kids about how white privilege is a little bit like that it wasn't fair that that car was starting position before, kind of afterwards, slightly ahead, and actually if the car has pulls back a little bit, so it's level, so it has level understanding, and an even playing field, a fairness, then we can restart the race. And I guess the dictionary definition is inherent advantages possessed by a white person on the basis of their race in a society that is kind of characterized by racial inequality or injustice. And I think for me, just as you said, Dave, that the white privilege is not about the white person being, saying that you don't try and hurt someone maliciously. That's not what the meaning is. The meaning is stuff that has been inherited, where you will have a better, not a better start, but a kind of a head start in life, whatever that looks like. So just to throw out a couple of stats, last year black people were 9 times more likely to be stopped and searched by the police than white people. Just stopped, not even knowing who that person is. They are 5 more times likely to have force used against them by police as white people. And then a quarter of the UK prison population is made up of non-white people, despite them only representing 14% of the whole population. So yes, there are generic stats, but you see my point. And there was another example as well. We'll probably put this as a useful link, but there's a Channel 4 program called The Truth. Is it The School to End Racism or something like that?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
watched that. Brilliant
Yeah,
program.
so they start on like a sports field and they ask questions, stuff like, have you ever been stopped, or have you ever been told to wait outside a shop even though you're doing nothing wrong? And if the answer was no to those, you kind of take a step forward before we start the race, very similar to the sports car analogy.
Yeah.
And it kind of really, really helped those kids understand that there's been a history here. There's been a history here of dehumanization and injustice and hurt and hatred, which they haven't had to carry. So that's essentially what white privilege is.
Yeah. Anything to kind of tag on the end there, Sandy?
No, like that explained it really well, to be honest.
Yeah.
So kind.
Yeah, and I think I think as a white person, that's the thing I was completely ignorant to, because why, you know, like if I'm not confronted by something because of the color of my skin, I don't even think about it, and that's can be, you know, even saying that is, it's you can see where the rub is, where people feel like frustrated that we can have quite a nonchalant attitude towards this and be like, you know, like, you know, I don't fully understand what the problem is, but that's because I haven't experienced it, and that's what we're trying to wake up to the fact of. And yeah, go on.
Sorry, I was putting my hand up because I was like, I don't want to stop you.
No, it's fine.
But just to add on to that, actually, I would really recommend the young people having a look into Jane Elliott. She does these amazing experiments with people based on eye color, so people with brown eyes and people with blue eyes, to help to get people to understand this whole concept of there is a difference in the way people of different skin colors are treated. And there's a classic video where she did it on the Oprah Winfrey show back in the day. And there's another one from even further back, which is like filmed in black and white, but where she went into a school and did this experiment with children, where she basically told the children with blue eyes, she told the children at first with blue eyes that they were better than the ones with brown eyes. And it changed the way that these children interacted with one another, and they started to believe about themselves. Yeah, we are better. We're better because we have blue eyes. And she reversed this the next day, and then she told the children with brown eyes that they were better than the children with blue eyes. And again, those children with brown eyes began to start believing, no, we are better. And when they did different tests and things like that in the classroom, they actually found that those that were believing better about themselves were scoring higher, because they had something that was instilled in them, that they were being shown and taught and affirmed, you are good. But the problem with that is that it was one group that was told they were better than others. Now, what would it look like if we were all told we're all good at what we can bring to the table? And this is where there's a difference with that there is a group of people that are, because of history, because of, you know, the UK, especially in the West, because of the way these countries have been formed, it means that there is a group of people that have this privilege, that have this kind of upper ground of, yeah, we're better. But thing is, not every white person thinks like that. And this is something my dad reminds me of constantly, which I appreciate so much, because the racism he's experienced from the 60s is so different to like what I've experienced, so much more extreme, violence and everything that him and his family went through from immigrating from India. And he's always instilled in me, for every one person that is racist, there are 3 others that are not, and we've got to remember that. And I think that's so important to remember, because we can get on the bandwagon of grouping everyone together, and it's that we need to recognize this inherent issue and problem we have in the West specifically, but we have to look forward with hope and look at the reality that not every white person thinks that way, but we must have a look at ourselves individually and say, am I ignorant? Am I carrying that, you know? I don't know if that made any sense at all.
And you can touch on a couple of these other things that we keep seeing pop up right now. It's this idea of that, you know, like, I guess the history of racism in the West, in the UK, that I think a lot of people are kind of realizing that, hold on a minute, we were never taught this. We were never, you know, in the education system, this wasn't a thing. And if it was such a minor role. Nobody likes to play on the horrendous things that we as a nation have done in the past. So we kind of sweep them under the carpet. And but the reality is that that has affected the way that we are as a society, which comes onto this other thing of systemic racism.
Yeah.
So what about this thing, systemic racism? What's that?
Yeah. So systemic racism is, and I'll throw out the dictionary definition again, is a form of racism that is embedded as just normal practice, like you said, kind of sweeping under the carpet, not knowing anything different within society, organisations, whatever. And this is like transcendent. It can lead to stuff like the way we see criminal justice, the way we see employment, housing, healthcare, kind of political power, and education, and amongst other issues. So there's another great analogy where there's two friends, and one of them is white, one of them is black. They're really good pals, but they live in different areas of the neighbourhood. One area is sort of perceived more as a richer area. The other area is not perceived as that. And actually, they went to the same school. They went to two different schools. And the reason why is because one school was aimed at the more affluent area, and one school wasn't. And it's this idea of because of the patterns or because of what's happened through history, the rewards you might get or the expectations you might get are significantly lower. And this has kind of come back through because of slavery, because of the history of and what's happened in the 1700s and 1800s, and this idea of racial discrimination. And I think, yeah, it's because of a system that we aren't aware of completely, or we might be aware of, but we just think it's kind of part of life. This is how it is. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's that, what we're trying to break right now is that this is how it is. Yeah. Because when we come to a place of acceptance, nothing changes. But when we actually say this isn't good enough, because we start to see the truth behind some of this systemic stuff, perhaps stuff that is designed to keep a certain people group oppressed and not achieving and not having the same starting place as everybody else. And that's when we start to see a bit of change. So we're short on time, but if we could just kind of wrap up by saying, as a minimum, we need to start educating ourselves. What's the best way that we can start doing that? Because it's such a huge and very complex and multi-layered issue, isn't it? It's not, there isn't a one magic bullet kind of fix all answer, but how do we start?
I think the biggest thing, I think during this time, there is a lot on social media that we are just taking in. And something that I've seen is a lot of my white friends realizing their own white privilege or white ignorance. And they're on their own journey of self-discovery, of inward looking, of what's my responsibility in this to be better and to help change this situation. And I think the biggest thing with education is looking at what things are we taking in online, especially as young people. I spend so much time online. I work online. As Dave mentioned earlier, my job's digital communications lead at work. I'm constantly online on social media. But I think another thing away from the online world is looking at who are our friends around us, what's our environment like? Is it a mixed culture environment or is it not? Because that really shapes what your experience and outlook is to the issue of race. Now, for me, I've grown up in a multicultural family and society around me. Like, my school was very multicultural, which was amazing. And I've really benefited from that because I understand the struggle of many different people: white people, black people, Asian people, mixed race people. That's a whole nother thing in itself. And I think who you surround yourself with, because the conversations you have, just from us having this conversation now, like, we've shared our own experiences, and that will have hopefully opened our eyes in some sort of way that, oh, my experience is not the only experience that is what everyone's experiencing. So the way I have experienced racism will look a lot different to how Scott has. And it's important, even for me, to understand the difference between racism towards Asian people and towards black people, and the differences within the two communities. So within all of that, what I'm saying is, get some multicultural friends and pursue friendships with people that are different from you. Pursue that, because I think within that is education in itself. You can have your stuff online, which is great, but until you actually step out of your comfort zone in real life and surround yourself with different people, you're not going to get the real education, and you're not going to challenge yourself the most to get the most out of other people's life experiences. Does that make sense? That would be my 2 pence, and I'm going to just...
That's really good. Yeah, that's great. So for me, 3 things. The first thing is listen to stories of any non-white people that you know, and even maybe white people that had contacts or kind of had encounters in sort of racial injustice that they've seen around them or in them. Listen to those stories. I guess going back to what you said, Sandeep, I think realise that Stafford's it's very white populated. Where I'm from, it's much more multicultural, and yeah, it's trying to find those friends that you may have in school, that are black or Asian or any other ethnicity. Like ask them. We get to this point where we kind of think, oh, I don't want to ask, I kind of might offend them or something. Actually, the fact that you will ask them politely is such an encounter, such a way of kind of breaking down barriers and walls, because they will feel so like, oh well, they want to hear my story. Like, we never really ask that. So young people, definitely talk to your ethnic friends and say, hey, I had this conversation, I saw this conversation on YouTube, I would love to hear your story if you had any issues with that, because I want to learn. Second thing is educate. As you were saying, Dave, it would be great to kind of put this, on curriculums in school, right? So we'll definitely put loads of links down of what stuff you can see and educate with. And yeah, find the right meanings of stuff. Social media is very, very complex, so make sure you kind of get your sources really, really right. And then the third thing is act on it. Kind of act on, which is kind of reverse the point of finding friends and having chats with them. Act on it. Pay attention to our thoughts and reactions to things. Sign petitions, maybe petitions for curriculums to be into school, like in 6 months' time or whatever else. Let's start to find things that we can put our voice in, or put our tapping on our phones to sign up with or to learn with. So yeah, listen, educate, and act.
I think one more thing to add as well, and I think this is an important point, is that as we pursue friendships or seek to get to know other people and their experiences, we have to look inwardly to make sure that we are going in with a learner's attitude.
Yeah.
And even for me in this season, I've never seen the conversation from a white person's perspective of their own ignorance and or their own white privilege. I don't even identify with that, to be honest, which is how I'm sure white people feel when they're hearing stories of people of brown skin that have gone through racism. But I've had to learn to go in with, I've got to go in with a learner's mentality. I've not walked your shoes, but I want to hear about it, and I want to see what that's like for you, so that I can learn to love like Jesus loved, and to be respectful within that, and to just pursue that and pursue the difference. But the learner's mentality is what makes all the difference in it, which then means that you can go in and ask a question, and not be afraid, because you're coming from a point of humility of, I don't know.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's good to not know and to admit that. It's a very good thing. And I've had to do that in this season as well.
Yeah, that's great. That's really useful, actually. So, yeah, I guess it's the start of a journey rather than the end of one with this, isn't it? And
Yeah,
I think, yeah, but it's positive, and it might be painful.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is having compassion and trying to understand each other better, and being sensitive towards each other, and just being community, and widening our understanding of what that means and what that looks like, and just being better people, looking more like Jesus. And so thank you so much, both of you, for taking time out to chat around this. It's awkward in a brilliant way, isn't it? In
a good way.
Yeah, it's good to, and I think the reason it's so good is because it's honest, and it's real honest conversation with each other about life stuff and how we feel about stuff. So so thanks for sharing, and hopefully if you're watching this, then you got something out of it, and you can get in touch with us if you kind of have any questions, or you want any more sources from these guys, or want to just kind of catch up and pick their brains a little bit. But I'm sure they won't mind too much about that. So yeah,
I'll be the brown friend if anyone needs one.
awesome. Thanks very much, guys, and yeah, we'll catch you again.
See ya.
Bye.